If someone had told me walking away would hurt worse than the bet, I would have denied it. It was meant to be a joke. That's what she said when the truth finally surfaced. A stupid, drunken dare at a bachelorette party. Marry a stranger. Keep it believable for a month. Post photos. Share a bed. Don't crack. Win the bet. Take the cash. Walk away. Only she didn't walk away. And now I couldn't, either. I met her in Neon Harbor. Of course I did. I was there for a design expo. Bored, burned out, and one overpriced cocktail away from deleting every client contact I'd ever made. She was in white sequins, laughing too loud at the bar, surrounded by a group of women who all looked like they hadn't blinked in for hours. She caught my eye, smirked like the universe had just handed her a gift, and walked over like she already knew my name. "Hi," she said, sipping something pink and dangerous. "You look like you're thinking about setting this place on fire." "Not the place, just the overpriced drinks." "Let me guess, you're here for work." "Is it that obvious?" "Only someone here for work would be wearing real shoes." I glanced down at my boots. She was right. Everyone else was in glitter and heels and chaos. "You're here for fun?" "Kind of," she said, her smile curling like smoke. "I'm here to win a bet." "And what are you betting on?" "Marriage," I laughed. "Seriously? First one to get married before sunrise gets the prize." "And what's the prize?" $10,000 and eternal bragging rights." "That's insane." "That's Neon Harbor." "So, you're just going to find some poor stranger and what? Convince them to marry you?" "Something like that." "Sounds risky." "Sounds fun." She paused, looked me up and down like I was a menu item. She was considering ordering twice. "You game? Are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm asking you to help me win a stupid bet and then get free drinks for life." If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you. I don't even know your name. It's Rowan Delaney. And you are Maya. Just Maya for now. We got married 23 minutes later. She found a chapel. I found a bottle of champagne. Neither of us found any good reason not to. The ceremony was short, messy, hilarious. She wore a tiara someone lent her. I wore a leather jacket over my jumpsuit. We kissed for the camera. We signed the papers. We stumbled back to the hotel and slept fully clothed side by side like two idiots who didn't know what kind of wildfire they'd just started. The next morning, I expected awkwardness, regret, maybe even a full-on freakout. But Rowan just yawned, checked her phone, and said, "Well, I guess we're married now." "Guess so." "You hungry?" "Starving." She bought me pancakes. I paid for coffee. We walked the strip like tourists, laughing too much, bumping shoulders like we'd done it 1,000 times before. She made everything feel easy, effortless, dangerous. I should have known better. "You want an annulment?" she asked over lunch. "Do you?" She shrugged. "Could be fun to ride it out." "Ride what out?" "The month. There's a time limit now." It's what the girl said. "Keep it up for 30 days. That's the full win. You're still doing the bet, of course. But we can make it our own." "And what do I get out of it?" "I'll give you half the money and a free trip back to Neon Harbor in 30 days to undo the damage." I stared at her. She winked. "Come on, Maya. Live a little." I should have walked away. I should have said no. But I didn't because she had this pull, this gravity, this spark that lit up every part of me I thought had gone dim. So I said yes. And everything after that happened too fast. Photos on Instagram, new rings, joint accounts for groceries, she claimed. She moved into my apartment 2 days later with 2 duffel bags and a blender she never used. She stole the left side of the bed, drank all my oat milk, and rewired every part of my carefully ordered life. I let her. I liked it. She flirted like it was breathing. Constant, casual, devastating. And I let her do that, too, because it wasn't real. Not really. Until it started to feel like it was. Until I caught her watching me cook breakfast like it meant something. Until she curled against me on the couch and sighed like she was safe. Until she touched my wrist one night slowly, gently like she didn't want to let go. "We're good at this," she whispered. "At fake marriage, at whatever this is. Don't fall in love with me, Rowan." "Too late." She said it with a laugh, a joke. But I couldn't laugh back because my heart had already started to believe her. 2 weeks in, she kissed me for real. Not for a picture. Not for the bet. Just because. We were on the balcony, tipsy, watching city lights flicker like fireflies. She leaned in. I didn't move. Her mouth was warm, slow, searching. And I kissed her back like I'd been waiting for it since the day she walked up to me in sequins. We didn't talk about it the next morning. We didn't have to. Everything had already changed. And I knew somewhere deep, quiet, terrified inside me. I knew this woman, this wild, reckless stranger I'd married on a dare was going to wreck me in ways I hadn't even imagined yet. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when I realized I liked the sound of her laugh more than I should. Rowan had found a bottle of wine I didn't know I had tucked behind the flower in my kitchen, and was currently dancing in the middle of the living room in one of my oversized t-shirts. Her hair in a messy bun, her bare legs moving like she had no idea I was watching her. But she knew. Of course she knew. She always knew. "Come dance with me," she said, spinning once before grabbing my hand. "No, why not?" "Because I don't dance. You're married now. You have to do weird things for your spouse. That only applies to real marriages." "Says who?" "Says literally the entire legal system." She pulled me toward her, her eyes playful and teasing. "Then consider this a rehearsal for whatever fake event we have to attend next." "We're not attending any events." "We should. People need to see us for authenticity." "There's no one to convince, Rowan. There's always someone watching." I roll my eyes. But she wrapped her arms around my waist anyway and rested her head against my shoulder, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was. Maybe we'd crossed that line so quietly I hadn't noticed we were already standing on the other side. "You smell like wine," I muttered. "You smell like denial. I should have divorced you in Neon Harbor. But then you wouldn't have me making your life more interesting." "You mean chaotic." "Same thing." I didn't say anything after that. We just swayed. No music, no rhythm, just the sound of her breath against my neck and the soft creak of the floor beneath our feet. And somewhere between the silence and the warmth of her fingers against my spine, I felt something shift. Dangerous. Real. The next morning, she was gone. I found a note on the counter in her loopy, ridiculous handwriting. "Coffee's dead." I went to revive it. "You were drooling. Don't deny it." I smiled despite myself and reached for my phone. 3 missed texts, all from her. "They're out of oat milk. Is it an emergency? Also, what's your stance on cinnamon rolls?" "Never mind. I bought them." "You're welcome." She returned 15 minutes later, grinning like she'd saved the world. "I brought peace offerings." I wasn't mad. But I brought cinnamon rolls, Maya. "And now I forgive you for everything, including marrying you for money." The words slipped out too easily, too sharp. Her smile faltered. "Rowan, no, it's fine," she said, dropping the bag on the table and pulling out cups. "You're allowed to still be pissed. I get it. That's not what we said we'd keep this light, and now we're dancing in the middle of the night. And baking feelings into our breakfast." "You think I'm baking feelings?" "You're not denying it." I stepped closer. "Maybe I'm just trying to survive a situation I didn't ask for. Maybe you're starting to like me. Maybe I'm scared of liking you." Her expression softened. "Maya, you made a bet. You married me for a joke. You kissed me for a picture. You moved into my space, my life, and made it feel like it's always been yours. And I let you because somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling fake. And that terrifies me. She reached out, gently brushing my wrist. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did. Then let me make it right. How? Let me earn it. Let me show you I'm more than a stupid dare. You can't just fix this with cinnamon rolls. I'll add coffee and a foot massage. You're insufferable. You married me, remember? We held each other's gaze for a long time, the air thick with everything we hadn't said. Then, softly, she added, I didn't expect to fall for you either, Rowan, but I am. I looked away not because I didn't believe her, but because I did, too much. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the way she looked at me when she said it, not joking, careful not to break the moment by saying too much. Around midnight I got up, wandered into the living room, and found her curled on the couch, staring out at the city. Can't sleep, I asked. Didn't want to. Why? Because I didn't want to miss it. Miss what? This? You. I sat beside her. She didn't reach for me or push me away, she just waited. This started with a lie, I said. Yeah, she answered. But it doesn't feel like one anymore. Because it isn't. I turned to her. If we do this, if we try for real, you have to be all in. I already am. No more games. No more bets. No more pretending. Only if you stop pretending you don't like my shower singing. I smiled. Deal. She leaned in slowly, carefully, and when her mouth found mine, it wasn't a blaze, it was warmth, safety, home. I kissed her back because somehow, against every odd, I'd married the last person I ever thought I'd fall in love with. And now I had no idea how to fall out. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since we'd gotten married in that ridiculous, glitter-drenched neon harbor chapel. 21 days since I let a woman I barely knew move into my home, take over my mornings with off-key songs, and crowd the sink with her 3-step skincare. 15 days since she kissed me without a camera anywhere near us. 7 days since she whispered I'm falling for you into my neck, thinking I was already asleep. 3 hours since I said out loud that I wasn't pretending anymore. I'd fallen hard, and it terrified me. Rowan wasn't someone you eased into. She was a free fall, no warning, no net, just wind in your ears and her smile in your veins. She slid into my life like she'd always been there. She knew how I took my coffee, when to tease and when to leave me be, which mug I reached for first. She remembered my favorite professor's name and could quote my favorite movie better than I could. She made the ordinary crackle, and that scared me, because it wasn't supposed to be this way. It had started as a lie, a bet, a foolish game. Now every time her fingers brushed mine, or she looked at me like I was something precious, it felt like the truth was sprinting after me down a dark hallway I couldn't outrun. She claimed she couldn't cook, that she was hopeless in the kitchen. But I came home to the smell of garlic and rosemary and something bubbling gently on the stove. You're home, she said with a grin. I had a weird urge to impress you. With pasta. With love, she said dramatically, holding out a spoonful for me to taste. And parmesan. I smiled despite myself, tasted it, groaned. Okay, that's good. You're welcome. We ate on the couch, legs tangled, plates balanced on our knees. The TV played something neither of us watched. Her hand found my thigh somewhere between the second glass of wine and dessert. You're quiet, she said, thinking. Dangerous. Always. Want to talk about it? Not really. She didn't push. Just lean her head against my shoulder and let the silence stretch. Do you regret it? I asked after a while. The bet? All of it. Sometimes, she said honestly, because I didn't know how much I'd end up caring. My chest tightened. Do you care? Too much? I turned to face her. Her eyes were wide, open, vulnerable in a way that made something inside me ache. Then show me, I whispered. Her lips met mine a second later. Soft at first, hesitant, but growing deeper, more urgent. I set my plate aside, cupped her face, pulled her closer. She shifted, straddling my lap, her hands in my hair, her mouth hot and eager. "Tell me to stop," she breathed. "I won't," I said. "Tell me what you want." "You." She stood suddenly, grabbing my hand and pulling me toward the bedroom. Her breath was shaky, her fingers tight around mine. She shut the door behind us and turned slowly. "You sure?" "I've never been more sure." Her kiss was fire this time. Hungry, she tugged my shirt over my head, dropped hers to the floor. Our clothes came off in a trail across the room, and by the time we hit the bed, we were a mess of limbs and gasps and skin. She took her time, touched me like she already knew where I needed her, kissed every inch of me, like she was memorizing me for later. And when I whispered her name, she looked into my eyes and said, "I want this to be real. All of it. It already is." I whispered back. She made love to me like it mattered, like I mattered, like this wasn't a bed anymore, but a beginning. When we were done, we lay in the dark, breathing heavy, our bodies slick and tangled. She reached for my hand and laced our fingers together. "This doesn't feel fake," she said, "because it isn't. So, what happens when the month is over?" "We talk about forever." Her voice caught. "You'd really stay married to me." "I already am." She turned her face into my neck and exhaled shakily. "Then, let me spend the rest of this week proving I'm worth it." "You don't have to prove anything, but I want to. I want to show you that even if it started as a lie, everything I feel for you now is the most honest thing I've ever known." I kissed her hair. "Then show me," and I let her all night again and again and again. There were 5 days left in the month. 5 days before the original deadline of the bet she'd made with her friends. Before the lie that had started, everything was supposed to end. But nothing about what we had felt like a lie anymore. Not the way she kissed me in the morning without thinking. Not the way she touched my back when I was making coffee. Not the way she whispered goodnight against my skin like she was sealing herself into my bones. Rowan was still Rowan. Chaotic, impulsive, too much, and never enough. But she was also more now. She listened. She remembered. She let me rest my head in her lap without comment and ran her fingers through my hair until I fell asleep on the couch. She started folding her towels the way I liked. She asked about my deadlines, my clients, my ideas, and not just to be polite. She wanted to be part of the life she'd stumbled into. I could feel her building something with me day by day, word by word, like she was rewriting the beginning we never got to choose. But something shifted on day 26. I noticed it in her eyes first. She was distant, quiet, not in a dramatic way, not like she was pulling away, just unsure, like she was waiting for something or dreading it. That morning, she didn't kiss me when she got out of bed. She just pulled on her hoodie and disappeared into the kitchen. I followed a minute later and found her staring at her phone, face pale. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Just text from the girls." "The girls? The ones she made the bet with?" I nodded slowly. "Is it about the money?" "Kind of. You win." "Technically, yeah. And I don't care." "Then why do you look like you're about to throw up?" She didn't answer right away, just set her phone down and crossed her arms. "They want to throw a party, celebrate the end of the month, the win. They want us to come." "Us?" "Yeah." I swallowed. "You want to go?" "I don't know because it'll make this feel like what it started as." "Exactly." I walked over to her, slid my hands around her waist, pulled her against me. "Then don't go for them. Go for us. Go to show them that it's not a joke anymore. That I'm not a joke to you." Her eyes lifted to mine. "You really trust me to do that?" "I wouldn't have let you stay if I didn't. You let me stay because I annoyed you into it. I let you stay because even when I hated the way it started, I couldn't walk away from you, and I still can't." Her voice cracked. "You're too good to me. You're just not used to people staying. Not when they know the truth. Then show them the truth's change." She kissed me then, slow, deep, full of something that shook me down my spine. That night, we went to the party. It was at one of her friends' lofts. All glass walls and curated playlists and too much perfume in the air. People stared when we walked in, whispered. A few pointed. One girl lifted her glass toward Rowan with a knowing smirk, like they shared a private joke. Rowan went rigid beside me. I squeezed her hand. Ignore them. I deserve it. Maybe. But we don't. The tall one, blonde, too sure of herself, sauntered over. Wow, you really committed, huh? Rowan didn't blink. What do you want, Sloane? Just appreciating the show. Didn't think you'd actually last the month. Neither did I. Sloane pivoted to me. So how's it feel being married to the queen of dares and disappearances? Pretty great, actually, I said, lifting my chin. She makes killer pancakes and barely snores. Sloane stalled. Rowan looked at me like I'd just handed her back a piece of herself. You always were full of surprises, Sloane muttered, and drifted away. We left an hour later. Rowan was quiet in the car, but once we were home she sank onto the couch, tugged me into her lap, and buried her face in my neck. Thank you. For what? For not making me feel like a mistake. You're not. Even if it started that way. Even then. I keep waiting for you to hate me. Too late. Why? Because you loved me first. You think that makes me safe? No, I said, kissing her jaw. It makes you mine. She didn't let go all night, not even in sleep. And that's when I realized I wasn't afraid of the month ending. I was afraid of what came after, because the bet was over. The dare was done. And everything left between us was real. The last day felt like standing at the edge of something I couldn't quite name. Not an ending, exactly, but not a beginning either. The room was quiet when I woke. Rowan's side of the bed was cold, the blanket still neatly folded where she'd left it. I sat up slowly, watching the soft morning light slip through the curtains. My chest heavy, not with dread or doubt, just weight. The weight of what we'd built in 30 days. Of everything that had shifted since the night she stood in a neon harbor bar and asked if I wanted to do something reckless. I found her in the kitchen, barefoot in one of my sweatshirts, hair in a lazy braid, staring into her coffee like it might answer the questions she hadn't voiced. You're up early, I said. Couldn't sleep. Me neither. It's the day, isn't it? Yeah. She finally looked at me, face unreadable. So, what now? That depends. On what? On whether you still want to be married to me. She blinked. You think I don't. I think you're scared. I think part of you still believes you'll wake up and I'll be the punchline. Like I'm just part of the joke. You were never the joke. Then why haven't you said it? She stared at me, said what? That you love me. The silence stretched between us like a wound. She took a breath, then stepped closer, setting her cup down on the counter. Maya, I've been in love with you since the first time you rolled your eyes at me and told me I was exhausting. That was day 3. I know. And you waited until now because I didn't think I deserved to say it. Not after the way this started. Not after the way I used you. You didn't use me. I did at first. But then it stopped being about winning the bet. It started being about memorizing the way you hum when you're cooking, or the way your fingers twitch when you're dreaming. It became about how you made my life feel like something I wanted to stay in, not run from. My heart thudded it against my ribs. Then say it. I love you, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I love you so much it hurts. I crossed the space between us in a heartbeat and kissed her like the world was on fire. She kissed me back like she didn't need oxygen. Her hand slid into my hair, her body pressed against mine, and the fear that had lived between us for weeks finally cracked open and disappeared. We didn't speak for a long time after that. We just held each other in the kitchen, the soft morning wrapping around us like a promise. Eventually, she pulled back just enough to look at me. I called my lawyer yesterday. My breath caught. Why? To ask what happens if we don't file the annulment. And she said we'd stay married. I smiled. And what did you say to that? I said, good. That night we stayed in No more fake photos. No more posts. No more pretending. Just the two of us curled on the couch, her head in my lap, my fingers brushing through her hair. She looked up at me and said, "You make me feel like I don't have to run anymore." I leaned down, kissed her slowly. "Then don't promise me something. Anything. If I ever forget what this is, remind me. Remind me that it's real. I will. And if you forget, then you better be ready to make me fall in love with you all over again." She smiled. "I could do that. You already did." We fell asleep together that night. No more countdowns. No more doubts. Just a soft certainty between our hearts. And when I woke up the next morning to her fingers tracing patterns on my skin, I knew this wasn't the end of a bet. It was the beginning of forever. It had been 3 days since the end of the bet. 3 days since the 30-day deadline passed. Since we stood in the kitchen barefoot and tangled in each other's arms, whispering promises we hadn't dared speak until then. And yet, everything still felt like it was holding its breath. Rowan was different now. Not distant, not cold, just quiet. Like her body knew this was real. But her mind hadn't caught up. She still touched me like she needed me to breathe. Still pulled me close in the middle of the night. Still looked at me like I was the only thing anchoring her to the ground. But something in her was waiting for what I didn't know until I found the envelope. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for my sketch pad in the drawer under the coffee table when I found it. A plain white envelope. No name. No return address. Just a soft crease down the middle like it had been opened and closed too many times. Inside was a check. $10,000. Signed and dated by someone named Sloan. I froze. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. This wasn't just a joke between friends. This was real money, a prize. And she'd won. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just sat there holding proof that everything we'd built, every night spent curled in each other's arms, every laugh, every kiss, every whispered confession. It had all started with a game she played to win. And now I didn't know what was real anymore. "You weren't supposed to find that." Her voice behind me was low, wounded. I turned slowly. She stood in the hallway barefoot, hair still wet from her shower, a towel hanging loose around her shoulders. Her eyes were wide, tired, afraid. "You didn't throw it away," I said, "because I didn't know what to do with it. You kept it. I didn't cash it, but you kept it." "Maya, how long were you planning to hide this?" "I wasn't hiding it. I just couldn't bring myself to get rid of it because it felt like proof of how badly I messed this up. Of what I did to you. To us." "Then why didn't you tell me it existed?" "Because I was ashamed. You should have been honest. I thought if I told you you'd leave, you should have trusted me more than that." She stepped forward. "I do. I didn't at first because I didn't trust myself. I've never been good at staying. But you made me want to stay. You made me want to be better. So I kept it. Not because I wanted it, but because I needed to remember where this started. So I never let myself forget what I almost lost." I stared at her. "You kept the check as a punishment, as a reminder. You said you loved me." "I do." "Then why does this feel like I'm still part of the lie?" "Because I haven't forgiven myself for how it started." She moved closer slowly like I might disappear if she stepped too hard. "But every moment since the day I moved in, every single one has been real. Maya, you have to believe me. You have to believe that when I touch you, when I hold you, when I look at you like you're the only thing I see, it's not for a game. It's because I can't not love you." My throat tightened. I looked down at the check again, then back up at her, then do something with it. "Prove to me that it doesn't matter." She didn't hesitate. She walked over, took the envelope from my hand, tore the check in half, then again and again until pieces of it rained down like ash between us. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "Only you do." I exhaled shakily. "Okay." She stepped into my arms, her fingers tangling in my shirt, her breath catching. "Do you still want me?" I didn't answer with words. I kissed her hard, deep, full of everything I'd been holding back. She gasped into my mouth, her arms wrapping around my waist, her body pressing against mine like she needed to feel every inch of skin we'd bare to each other. Over the last month. Bedroom, she whispered. Now I led her there without breaking the kiss. We undressed slowly, reverently, like we were relearning each other. Her hands shook. Mine didn't. I laid her down and took my time. Touched her like she was something I'd earned, not stolen. Kissed every part of her until she was whispering my name like a prayer. And when we finally collapsed together, our hearts pounding in the same rhythm, she curled into me and said, I want to be your wife for real. You already are. No, not because of a bet. Not because of a dare. I want to choose you in front of people, in front of the world. I want to marry you again, this time for real. I looked into her eyes, saw nothing but truth. Then asked me, will you marry me? I smiled. You're a disaster, but I'm your disaster. Yes, I whispered. 1,000 times yes. She kissed me again, and this time it tasted like forever. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the low sound of Rowan humming some out-of-tune melody. From the kitchen, her voice barely audible, but still warm enough to make something flutter in my chest. The morning light was soft through the window, spilling across the bed like a promise. And when I sat up, her side was already empty. The sheets were still warm. I wrapped one around myself and padded barefoot toward the kitchen, finding her barefoot in my hoodie, her legs bare, her hair a wild mess that somehow looked intentional. She was pouring coffee with one hand, flipping pancakes with the other, and humming like nothing in the world could touch her, like this was ours, and we didn't owe anyone an explanation. Morning, wife, I said, voice low and lazy. She turned and smiled. That grin I hated loving so much. She gave me that look, the one that always meant trouble or something too tender to touch. Morning, fiancé, she said with a wink. Again, I wrapped my arms around her from behind, pressed a kiss to her neck, and she softened into me like she belonged there, like she always would. We ate breakfast curled on the couch, syrup on our fingers, her legs thrown over my lap, talking wedding plans. Not big, not loud, nothing like what she might have imagined back when she was the kind of girl she was before me. We talked about quiet things, intimate ones, a beach, just us, maybe a few friends, simple rings, a ceremony without fine print. We could do it on the coast, she said, licking syrup from her thumb. Just us, the ocean, vows we don't have to fake. You really want to marry me again? I asked. You're not tired of me yet. She kissed my cheek. I want to wake up to you for the rest of my life. If that takes a second wedding, I'll do it 100 times. I smiled, kissing her fingers. Then we'll do it our way for real this time. The day blurred into searches and tabs, locations, photographers who catch candid moments that don't look like ads, texts to her sister about dates. In our bedroom she tried on a few dresses, spinning out with a dramatic flourish and asking which one made me want to drop to my knees. All of them, I said, obviously. We were laughing, tangled in half-buttoned satin and tulle, when her phone buzzed across the room. Her smile fell the second she saw the name. Sloane. She didn't answer right away, just stared like the screen had teeth. You okay? I asked. She nodded too fast. Yeah. It's just she wants to meet. A chill crept in. Why? She didn't say. Something about closure. I paused, searching her face. Do you want to see her? I don't know. Part of me does, to close the door for good. But the other part, I don't want her to ruin this. She can't ruin us unless you let her. I won't. I promise. Then, let's go together. The next morning we met Sloane at a neutral little cafe with uncomfortable chairs and bad art on the walls. She looked good, composed, polished, like someone who hadn't turned my wife's love life into a game. Rowan. Maya, she said with a nod. I didn't smile. Rowan didn't either. So what is this? Rowan asked. Sloane exhaled. I wanted to say I'm sorry. The bet was cruel. It was supposed to be fun, but it wasn't. Not for you. Not for Maya. Not even for me in the end. Why now? I asked. Because I've been watching. I saw your photos. I heard about the second wedding, and I realized I started something that grew into something I had no right to touch. You love each other. That was never supposed to happen, and I'm glad it did. Rowan didn't say anything. I reached under the table and found her hand, lacing our fingers together. You were wrong, I said. Love like this doesn't start from games. It grows from truth. And that's what we're building now. Sloane nodded. I just wanted to wish you both the best and say goodbye. After she left, Rowan and I walked in silence for a while. Then she said, that felt weirdly final. It was, and it needed to be. Are you mad I went? No, I'm proud. She stopped walking, turned to me in the middle of the sidewalk, and cuped my face in her hands. I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. I love you so much it scares me. Say it more, I whispered. I need to hear it, especially now. I love you, she repeated softer against my lips. I love you. I love you. I love you. I kissed her back like it was the only truth that mattered. We went home and didn't leave the bed for hours. We talked about the future, about where we live, what names we liked for dogs we didn't have yet. She cried when I showed her the ring I'd picked out for her. Simple, smooth, something real. She slipped it on like she'd been waiting for it all her life. We did it backwards, she said. But we did it, I replied. That night, she fell asleep in my arms, whispering promises I knew she'd keep. And I lay there thinking about how strange and beautiful it was to fall in love with someone you already married. Not because you had to, not because of a game, but because somehow, against all logic, your heart already knew what your mind needed time to catch up to. And now that it had, I wasn't letting go. Not ever. The week after we saw Sloane felt like breathing air we hadn't realized we'd been holding back. There was a lightness in Rowan I hadn't seen since Neon Harbor. Since before the bet turned into love, before everything tangled into something bigger than either of us had planned for. She smiled easier, touched me more freely, lingered in the doorway just to watch me get dressed, like the sight of me brushing my hair or buttoning a shirt was now a sacred moment. But more than that, she was present. No more distraction, no more flinches when her phone buzzed. No more late-night pacing while pretending she wasn't overthinking everything. It felt like we had turned a page, not into something brand new, but into something we were finally writing together. We set a date for the new wedding, just 2 months away. Small beachside, just like we imagined. No more lies, no more audience, just us and our truth. I didn't think anything could shake that certainty until the email came. I was going through my inbox at work when I saw it. Subject line, request for interview, Rowan Delaney and Maya Delgado. I opened it without thinking. The sender was a journalist, someone from an online lifestyle publication I'd followed for years. The email was polite, excited, even asking if we'd be willing to do a feature on our viral romance. The accidental Neon Harbor marriage, the 30-day dare, the public confessions. They wanted to tell our story, wanted to spin it into something romantic and quirky and wild. They had no idea. It had almost broken me. I sat there for a long time staring at the screen. Rowan hadn't mentioned it. I forwarded it to her without a message. An hour later, she showed up in my office. She didn't knock, just opened the door and walked in like she couldn't bear the space between us for another second. Maya, she said, breathless, holding her phone, I was going to tell you when, after I ignored it. I wasn't going to say yes. Why didn't you delete it? Because part of me wanted to show it to you. Let you see what we look like to the outside world now. To people who accidentally got married and actually made it work. You think that's what we are? No, she said, stepping closer. I think we're more than that. But I don't want anyone else telling our story. If it's going to be told, it should be by us. The way we lived it. Not how it started, but how we kept choosing each other anyway. I looked at her, my chest tightening. So, you want to do the interview? Not unless you do. Why? Because I don't want to hide us anymore. Not because of how we started. Not because of what people might think. Because I'm proud of us, of you, of this life we're building. And if you're willing, I want to tell the world that I married you by accident, but stayed married because I've never loved anyone like I love you. I didn't answer. I stood up, crossed the room, and kissed her hard. She melted into me like she always did, like her body already knew mine by heart. When we pulled back, I whispered, "Then we tell the story together." That night, we lay in bed reading the list of questions the journalist had sent. They were surprisingly thoughtful. Focus less on the viral hook and more on who we were now. What had changed? What it meant to fall for someone you already promised forever to before you even knew them. Rowan laughed at some of the questions, teared up at others. I forgot how scary it is to talk about the beginning. She said, "You don't have to be scared anymore. We're past it, are we? We're here, aren't we?" "Yeah," she whispered, burying her face in my neck. "We really are." The next day, we sat down for the interview. It wasn't flashy, just a call, just two women on a video screen talking about the most beautiful, chaotic, unexpected thing they'd ever fallen into. We told them everything. The bar, the bet, the wedding, the way it went from a joke to a home. I watched Rowan tell the story, her voice steady, her eyes never leaving mine. And when they asked what moment made her realize it was real, she didn't hesitate. The first morning I woke up in her bed and realized I didn't want to leave. They asked me the same question. The moment I saw her rip that check into pieces without blinking, I said, that's when I knew she'd stopped running. After the call, she curled into my lap and we sat in silence, letting it settle, letting the world hear us for the first time and not being afraid of what that meant. What if people still think it's all fake? She asked. Then they're not the ones we're marrying. Good point, she grinned. So now what? Now we get married again. You still sure? Always. She kissed me like it was a vow, and as I pulled her under the blankets, as we lost ourselves in skin and warmth and the ache of everything we'd built, I knew that no matter what came next, no matter what anyone else believed, we had already won because we hadn't just fallen in love. We'd chosen to stay there. The article went live 3 days after the interview. Rowan had just come home from picking up Thai food when her phone buzzed with the alert, and we sat cross-legged on the couch with noodles in our laps, reading it together. The headline was softer than I expected. From a dare to a yes. How a neon harbor bet became real love. The photo they'd used was one I didn't even remember being taken. US curled up on a blanket in the park, Rowan in my lap, laughing at something I must have said, my hand tucked behind her head like I never wanted her to move. The words were kind, warm, honest. They didn't mock us or turn us into a punchline. They captured the strange, raw, beautiful truth of our story. We read it in silence, the glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes. When we reached the last line, sometimes the most unbelievable beginnings lead to the most unforgettable endings. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. I didn't think I'd feel so exposed, she said. Do you regret doing it? No, not even a little. But now it feels like everyone can see what we have, like they can touch it. They can't. I leaned over and kissed her gently. Only we get to live it. I love you, she whispered. I know. You always say that like it's obvious. It is. Still, she traced her fingers over my collarbone, her touch feather-light. Say it back. I love you. I set my food down, pulled her into my lap, and whispered it again lips. I love you, Rowan. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. Then be scared with me. Every day we were still curled up there, tangled in each other, and half finished dinner when her phone buzzed again. She glanced down and froze. What is it? I asked. It's my mother. My heart stuttered. You haven't spoken to her in months. Since before the bet. Since before us. You think she saw the article? I knew she had. She didn't pick up, just watched the screen vibrate until it went still, then set the phone down like it might bite. What does she want? I asked. Probably to pretend none of it happened. Or to say she's proud now that it's cute and public and people are rooting for us. Do you want to talk to her? I don't know. She tucked her face into my shoulder. She made me feel like I had to be someone else for so long. Now that I'm not hiding, I don't know if I want her back in. I kissed her hair. You don't owe her anything. I know, but part of me still wants her to say it. That she's happy for me. That she sees me. She might not. And if she doesn't, I still do. Every version messy, scared, the girl who married me on a dare, and the woman choosing to marry me again. What if she ruins this? She won't. She doesn't have that power anymore. Because I gave it to you instead? Because you gave it to yourself. Her smile was small, but true. You always know what to say. That's why you married me. I married you because you made me laugh when I didn't think I could. And now I'm marrying you again because no one sees me like you do. That night we didn't mention her mother again. We lit candles in the living room and slow danced barefoot across the hardwood. To the playlist we'd made, songs that tasted like stolen kisses, sleepless nights, and beginnings. Mid-turn, she stopped and looked at me like I was the only thing breathing in the universe. You know, she said, this isn't how people fall in love. I know, I answered, and I wouldn't change any of it. Me neither. She kissed me soft and sure, hands cradling my face like she was afraid she might wake. But this time, we weren't pretending. No secrets. No check hidden in a drawer. No lie waiting to detonate. Just us, building a life one truth at a time. Later, tangled together, her breaths even against my collarbone. I thought maybe love doesn't need to start perfectly. Maybe it only needs to last long enough to turn real. And ours had, against every odd, against every doubt, until it became the most honest thing I'd ever known. The beach was hushed the next morning. Early light painted the waves in rose and gold. A gentle wind lifted the hem of my dress without bringing a chill. Everything smelled like salt, sand, and the promise of something new. The officiant stood barefoot near the shore. The chairs we'd set out held only the people who mattered. A handful of friends, her sister, my cousin, no one else. No one asking for explanations. No one who needed the origin story. They just knew how it turned out. To women standing on the edge of forever, ready to promise themselves to each other all over again. This time with open hearts and no secrets between them. Rowan stood a few feet away from me, radiant in a white linen suit that made her look effortless, windswept, and completely painfully mine. Her eyes didn't leave mine from the moment I stepped out of the small beach house and walked down the makeshift aisle. She smiled like she was remembering every step we took to get here, and I smiled back like I was remembering the moment I realized I never wanted to take another step without her. You look like trouble, she said under her breath as I reached her. You love trouble, I whispered back. The officiant smiled at us, then began speaking, but I barely heard a word. My whole world was standing in front of me, eyes shining with everything we'd survived. Every misstep, every lie, every night tangled in silence, and every morning that followed, full of warmth and hands that didn't let go. Rowan's fingers trembled slightly as she reached for mine, and I squeezed them to ground us both. Then she took a deep breath, turned toward me, and began her vows. I used to think love was something you earned, something you had to chase or perform or survive to deserve. I never thought it would find me at a bar in Neon Harbor. I never thought it would start with a dare and end with something real. But it did. You did. You made me believe in love that doesn't demand, love that doesn't punish, love that waits, that forgives, that holds. You are the bravest thing I've ever done, and I'm never letting go. My throat tightened, but I didn't look away. I wouldn't. When it was my turn, I spoke through the emotion rising in my chest like a tide. You married me for a bet. And for a while, I hated that. But then you stayed. You stayed when it got messy, when I got scared, when you didn't have to. And somewhere in all of that pretending, you showed me the most real kind of love I've ever known. You taught me that home isn't a place. It's a person. It's your laugh in the next room, your socks on my floor, your name in my mouth when I'm too tired to think. I don't care how we started. I care that we're still here. And I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life, knowing that we chose this. Not for money, not for pride, but because we could not. We exchanged rings. Hers slid onto my finger like it had always belonged there. Mine glinted in the morning sun as she pushed it gently onto my hand. The kiss was soft and deep and final in the best way. Our friends cheered. Her sister cried. I felt the wind rush past us as if even the ocean was exhaling. After the ceremony, we stayed barefoot in the sand. We danced to music from a single Bluetooth speaker. Rowan fed me cake with her fingers. I smeared frosting on her cheek, and she didn't stop smiling even once. That night, back in our beachside rental, we lay on the bed wrapped in each other. No one else around, just us, and the echo of vows still lingering in the room. I want to keep writing our story, I whispered. Then let's make it a long one, she murmured. No more running, only into you. I kissed her shoulder, her collarbone, the curve of her neck. She rolled over and kissed me back like it was the first time, slow and reverent. And when she was finally curled up against me, half asleep and humming under her breath, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the irony of it all. That something built on a lie had become the truest thing in my life. That someone who didn't mean to love me ended up doing it better than anyone ever had. We didn't get a traditional beginning. We didn't fall in love the right way. But we fell and we landed together. Now every day she kisses me like a promise. Every night she whispers my name like a prayer. And every morning I wake up to her beside me, still wearing my hoodie, still stealing the blanket, still laughing in her sleep sometimes. I know one thing without a single doubt. I didn't just marry Rowan Delaney. I chose her. I keep choosing her, and I always will. Thank you so much for your support. Whether it's by liking, commenting, sharing, or sending your super thanks. You make all the difference here on the channel.